So I'll try and finish by 2:50, and then we can do Asr, and then we'll have a bit of time, any Q&A with Sheikh Suleiman as well, and think about moving on. So in this presentation I'm going to cover four things. One is introduction to New Crescent Society, who we are and who I am. Introduction to the Islamic calendar itself. Some issues about the Islamic calendar in the UK. Now, you don't have a problem, you don't suffer with this problem in Cornwall because it's just one mosque. But in other parts of the country, we have different people doing Eid on different dates. So just kind of discussion on that and why Cornwall is strategically one of the most important places in the country that can actually bring unity to the whole of these islands. So it's amazing for Sheikh Suleiman and myself to be here, and very practically how to sight them in, which is very easy actually once we've gone through it. So just to begin with, about myself, my name is Imad. I have a job at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, in London, and I run a program there called the Astronomy and Islam Program. So we have a monthly program there, and part of my job also, this isn't my job with the observatory, I also run an organisation called New Crescent Society, which I'll give you tell you a little bit about. I'm also Bengali. A lot of people here found out about Bengali, so mashallah, I'm Bengali. And when I was growing up, actually, there's a lot of mosques in my area. I'm from London, and I remember I used to go to school, and the teachers used to ask me, "Oh, you know, what day you want to take off for Eid?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, miss." And they said, "Well, why don't you know?" And then half the school will take Eid one day, and the other half will take Eid a different day. So growing up, it's been very conscious for us in London and other parts of the country that we are very disunited. In fact, since I've been doing this, some people have been telling me that in the same house or on the same street, people do Eid on different days. It's not nice for children, especially that your neighbour that you play with, one of them is fasting and then the other one is doing Eid. So we really hope to be able to solve this problem. And my background, or how I got into this, actually, I was a student at Oxford University. I studied at Oxford, and one of my professors there, he used to do the moon sightings every month. And he was a Muslim professor, but it was just one of his interests. And in Oxford there's an observatory, and he used to take us to the observatory. So that's where I first learned about it. That's about 11 or 12 years ago. But it got revived for me maybe 5 years ago. I went on a holiday to Cape Town in South Africa, and Sheikh Suleiman's from South Africa as well. Now, in South Africa, they are doing the Sunnah every month, but really for Ramadan they do it in a big way. So when I went and I saw this, I was just like amazed. So here they are, as a community, they're going out to do the moon sighting, the Sunnah moon sighting for Ramadan and for Eid. This is actually an Eid sighting. So you can see people are here, ladies here having iftar. They go out to a beach. Obviously this is possible in Cornwall. They go out to a beach, which is easy for them to get to, and they go out and sight the moon. I just want to show you as well, you might be interested. This is the mayor of Cape Town. And this is the Prime Minister of the Western Cape, not of the whole country, but she's known as the Premier of the Western Cape. So it's not just something for Muslims, but politicians, local politicians in South Africa were really interested. So I came and I saw this and I thought, wow, like, why can't we do this? It's so amazing. People go out, they have iftar together, have a cup of tea, and they conduct this sunnah together. And in Cape Town, they were declaring Eid for the whole community with all of the imams together. So that's one of the imams, actually a few of the imams together from Cape Town, and he is declaring Eid on TV. So I thought this was quite interesting programming as well, having a cup of tea. But this is not just Cape Town, of course. This is across the Muslim world. We're not really doing it in the UK, but it's a feature of the whole Muslim world from the time of Prophet ﷺ up until now. So I'll just show you some these other countries. This is Pakistan. It's got a very big telescope here, looking for the moon, and this is Indonesia. My parents are from Bangladesh. They also do the moon sightings there. They've got very good moon sighting practices there, actually, some of the best that I've seen in the world. So that was how I got inspired, and that's when I approached Greenwich, and slowly I got a job at Greenwich saying, we Muslims have an interest, natural interest in astronomy. We use the sun to determine our prayer times, we use the moon to determine our months, and the stars in the past have been used to help us find direction and for Qibla. And so we've been working on this program together. And of course, Sheikh Suleiman mentioned this ayah in his khutbah today. It's natural for Muslims to have an interest in the sun and the moon and the stars for the reasons I've said, but it's also, of course, mentioned in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب, which means Allah is the one who made the sun shining and the moon a light, determining phases for you so that you might know the number of years and how to calculate them. So of course it's sunnah, but the notion of using the sun and the moon for us is from the Quran as well. So just a few things about New Crescent Society. We founded in 2016. We run a program called the Astronomy and Islam series. I'll show you some pictures about that. We also do community moon sightings. Not as big as Cape Town yet, but we've had some large moon sightings. 200 people come together. Cape Town, we're talking 6,000 people at those gatherings. And I'll show you some pictures of those as well. We've been in the media. BBC did the documentary with us in it. I've been on the radio a few times. We've also made some educational videos that went very viral with the Muslim community. And we also had a big conference, which I'll quickly show you as well. So these are our programs at the observatory. That's me teaching there. This is Dr. Emily, one of the astronomers at the observatory. Sheikh Suleiman has come as well a few times. He's here today. And we run this amazing planetarium show. By the way, this is the observatory's best-selling show. They said to us, we've never found a community so interested, because of course astronomy is of historical importance to Muslims and current. Historically, because in the past, astronomy really is a science that developed out of the Persian, Arab, Indian, Muslim world. And the things that those Muslims were developing in like 9th, 10th, 11th century was not seen in Europe for about 500 years later. So it's a really amazing history that we have. Then we do these community moon sightings, and I hope that we can have these moon sightings here. This is one that Sheikh Suleiman did. This is near his area in South London, Croydon. Here's one group I set up. This is a very good group. They've been going every month now for the last almost 2 years. There is a myth in the UK that the moon is not visible in the UK. That's one of the reasons people say we can't do this sight. We see the moon all the time. It's just a picture just to prove it to you. I'll show you some more pictures as well. In May 2018 and subsequently in this year, 2019, we did a show at the observatory. It's watched by about 20,000 people, where we live streamed the moon sighting for Ramadan and Eid. So that's the Shard, if you know the building, and this is the New Crescent. That's the one that we saw for Ramadan. In the middle of the city in London, can you see the moon?
I can see it
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's over there.
Yeah, and I really like this picture because, like, Cornwall, you have some of the best conditions in terms of light pollution. It's very low. You have western facing. This is in the middle of London. You can still see the New Crescent moon. Mashallah. This is the moon for Eid, again in the middle of London. Can you see it?
Right, yeah.
There it is. This is the moon that we saw for Eid of this year.
I would never see it. I would be terrible at the moon sight. I cannot see anything.
But again, maybe because I'm from London, I love this picture. But it proves we can see the moon in London, in the middle of all of this light pollution. I took that picture.
Absolutely.
So this is just to dispel the myth that the moon is not visible. Because when I first started talking to imams, they said, you know, we can't see the moon in the UK, it's impossible. And unfortunately, we're not, as a community, fully knowledgeable about astronomy, so we peddle some of these myths. Alhamdulillah, then in February, we held a conference, and this was with 132 mosques that came from different parts of the country to just discuss this issue. Called the National Hilal Conference. Sheikh Suleiman was there as well, is actually here in the picture. Same turban.
You see his head.
Yeah. And in this conference we discussed how can we come together, and I'll show you some of the things that we talked about at this conference, but it was very, really, really positive. Okay, so that's kind of an introduction as to who New Crescent Society is, my work with Sheikh Suleiman and the Observatory. Now, I'm going to quickly hand over to you. Just firstly, the second part is to think about the Islamic calendar together, but I'm going to hand over to you. What do you already know about the Islamic calendar? Anything at all, you can shout out.
It's 10 and 11 days shorter than the
Absolutely brilliant, yeah?
Christian, well, Georgian calendar.
It's 10 or 11 days shorter, that's absolutely perfect. Anything else what you know about the Islamic calendar?
Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu introduced it.
He introduced the numbering of it, but the calendar was actually, the there was an Arab calendar, and the Prophet ﷺ changed the calendar, and I'll talk a bit about that. But I think one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ is he founded the Islamic calendar in the form that we have it, and there's ayahs in the Quran about the calendar, and there's some hadiths about it. And you know, the Christian calendar is not founded by Christ. The calendar we use is a modified Roman calendar, changed by it's called the Gregorian calendar, named after Pope Gregory. The Buddhist calendar wasn't founded by the Buddha. Our calendar of Muslims was actually founded by the Prophet ﷺ. But Umar al-Khattab, what he did do was he made it, he called it the Hijri calendar, and he started numbering from the Hijrah, because before that all the years were named after an event, like the year of sadness, the year of Hijrah, the year of this, the year of the elephant. So they had no numbers. Anything else that you know about the Islamic calendar? Well, let me just go a few things. The Islamic calendar has got 12 months, which you might know, but the Islamic calendar, the Arabic calendar did not always have 12 months. Like you said, it's 10 or 11 days shorter. Now this means, as we know, the Islamic calendar cycles through all of the seasons, because the solar calendar is fixed to the seasons. So that means when I was young, when you were young, you would have fasted Ramadan in winter, and recently we've been fasting in summer. And that cycle takes 33 years to complete a total cycle. Now this was troublesome for the Arabs for several reasons. One reason is because it doesn't match the seasons. The Arabs like to do Hajj. Remember, Hajj is before the Prophet ﷺ. They had a kind of pagan Hajj, and they used to do it naked. They wanted the Hajj not in summertime because it's too hot. So they wanted Hajj in autumn, but also there was a caravan that used to go up into Syria and then come down by autumn. And that's also mentioned in the Quran, Rihlat al-Shita'i was-Sayf, the caravan of the winter and summer. These caravans will go up, get all the produce from Syria, Palestine region, come down, and ready for Hajj, everybody makes more money because you have all the trade coming in. So what they used to do is, every few years, they would add an additional month, this 13th month, and it's called Nasi. Another opinion is the reason the Arabs added Nasi, the 13th month, to their calendar, is because, you know, in the Muslim calendar and pre-Islamic Arab calendar, there are 4 months which are known as sacred months, which is Muharram, Dhul Qa'idah, Dhul Hijjah, and Rajab. 3 of them are together, Dhul Qa'idah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, so one after the other, and Rajab is just a month by itself. And this would be quite disruptive of the war schedule of the Arabs, because you're not allowed to go to war in these months. Maybe this 3 months was too much for them, they needed to go back to war, so they put in the month, go back to war, and then have another rest. And those 3 months together, by the way, is either side of Hajj. So it means you can safely come into Makkah, you know there's no war. They're not allowed to go to war, and you can safely leave, and it's not a war zone. So they used to put these in. But the Prophet ﷺ, he totally banned this practice. It's referred to in the Quran, there's an ayah in the Quran, which talks about Nasi, and it says, indeed, the ayah in translation is, indeed, your addition of the month of Nasi adds nothing except kufr. So a very strong statement in the Quran. And then the Prophet ﷺ reiterated that in the farewell sermon. And in the farewell sermon, he says a very amazing statement. He asked everybody, what day is it today? They say it's Friday. That's one of the reasons we know that Hajj and Arafah that year was a Friday. Then he said, well, what date is it? And they said, it's the day of Arafah. And he says, yes, it is. As if to confirm, today really is Dhul Hijjah. You have manipulated the calendar. You put a month in here, a month in there. But I'm telling you, today really is 9th of Dhul Hijjah. And he said, today time has come full circle and return to the cycle as when Allah created time, when he created the heavens and the earth. So he confirmed. And he said, from this day forth, no more Nasi. And he strictly kept the Islamic calendar to the lunar calendar. This does not mean a solar calendar is haram. We just saw the ayah of the Quran. It said the sun, you can use it. No, but our ritual calendar for Ramadan, for fasting, for all of the things we do in Islam that is related to a date, it is a lunar calendar. And Muslims always had solar calendar and lunar calendar alongside one another with no problem. In fact, I can speak about Bangladesh. The Emperor Akbar, he introduced a calendar in Bangladesh, which still have it today. It's a solar calendar, we call it Khoshali calendar. It's got 6 seasons in it. In Persian Empire, they developed a calendar which was a solar calendar, which is so accurate, it is actually more accurate than the Gregorian calendar. Because this Gregorian calendar, every 1,000 years, a bit more than 1,000 years, it loses a day. It goes out of sync with the sun again, so they have to put in an additional day. But this solar calendar loses a day it takes over 5,000 years to lose a day. So it's even more accurate. So Muslims always had the ability to use solar calendar and lunar calendar, so no problem. A month is 29 or 30 days in Islamic calendar. You can't have 28 days like February. You can't have 31 days like December. And that's because a month in the Islamic calendar is how long it takes for us to see one new crescent and then the next one. So one orbit takes 29 and a half days. One orbit, 29 and a half. So in that sense, it's quite scientific. It could be 29 days or 30 days. And across the year, you would approximately see half the months as 29 days and half the months as 30 days. So 6 and 6 or 7 and 5, either way. Normally, you would expect that. The month starts when the new crescent is sighted and not the new moon. Okay, the new crescent and the new moon, not the same. I'm just going to, very important one, I'll just show you this. This is the moon and it orbits the Earth, as you can see. When the sun and the moon and the Earth are in one line, you'll see that the moon disappears. There's a part of the moon's phase where it's invisible. The invisible phase is known as the new moon. That was yesterday. You couldn't see the moon yesterday. That's called the new moon. In some countries they call it zero moon. Scientifically we call it conjunction because it's all in one line, like an eclipse. And yesterday was an eclipse. When the moon moves away from the sun a bit, and so there's an angle for the sun's light to reflect, you get a small bit of the moon that we can see here. I'm not going to go into it in too much depth, but that's called the new crescent, and it's not the same as the new moon. The new crescent will normally occur a day or even 2 days after the new moon. So you know sometimes you look in your calendar, it's got a picture of a blacked out moon, and you think, why doesn't that correspond to the Islamic date? Why is the Islamic date 1 day later or 2 days later? Because our calendar does not begin with the new moon. It begins with the new crescent. Do you know the word for new crescent in Arabic?
Hilal.
Hilal. Yes, it's hilal. A new moon is not hilal. They call it iqtiran, which means conjunction, all in one line, together. Actually, the word hilal is very interesting. Ha, la, la. It comes from this root, ha, la, la. And it's related to being born, but also to scream for joy. There's an Arabic word tahleel, which means to say la ilaha illallah, tahleel, to say la ilaha illallah. As if like when you see the moon, you're so happy, you shout for joy. But in fact, older word, a Hebrew word, hallelujah, this comes from the same roots, like screaming, praise of God and enjoy. So, yes, 12 months, 29 or 30 days, and it begins with the new crescent. That's kind of the basic facts of the Islamic calendar. Some countries calculate their calendar and do not even conduct sightings. Example is Turkey. They do not conduct moon sighting in Turkey. And they have a formula, which is the month begins when the new moon, not the hilal, the new moon is above the horizon at sunset in Ankara. That's why you'll see the Turkish calendar is sometimes 1 day before other countries. Or Saudi Arabia actually uses almost the same formula as Turkey. Again, that's why Saudi Arabia is a bit early. And Saudi Arabia only use their calculated calendar for 8 months of the year. And for 4 months, they attempt sighting. For Ramadan, Sha'ban, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. So Saudi have a very mixed system. Because they have a mixed system, it does cause some troubles. Turkey is fully calculated. But other parts of the Muslim world, they have astronomical knowledge, but they also just do the traditional sighting. So Morocco, Bangladesh, Pakistan, South Africa, where I saw it in South Africa, Oman, other countries, they are doing the traditional sighting and have a very traditional Islamic calendar. I've underlined Morocco. I just want to say I actually went on a trip to Morocco and I was invited by the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Endowments to see how they do the moon sighting. And I just want to present it to you because I think it's one of the best models in the world. So I conducted the moon sighting from the top of this minaret. It's Masjid Qutubiyya. And they have been doing moon sighting there uninterrupted since the 12th century from this minaret. So it's amazing. It's Ramadan, I did it for Eid. So we did iftar here at the top of the minaret.
So which country is it?
Morocco.
Morocco.
Now, the system in Morocco is they have over 200, in fact, over 270 locations. So this is just one of their locations. On each of their locations, they send 3 people minimum. One of them is a judge, and 2 of them are witnesses. In fact, as you can see in my location, we had many more than 3 people. It's 3 people minimum. My location, there was probably about 20 of us on that day. And then they go out in all parts of the country, and then they report it back to the ministry. Because I was a guest, actually the head of the moon sighting committee was with me, and it's an amazing experience. I actually didn't see the moon from here, but they saw it in other parts of the country. And I saw him just receiving the reports on his phone. So we saw the moon, we saw the moon, we saw the moon. And then he made a phone call, and he said, Alhamdulillah, we've seen the moon, please declare Eid. And then I heard a cannonball fire to declare Eid. So it was an incredible experience for me. But they have a very good system. They do use data to help them sight the moon and negate impossible sightings. That means if somebody comes along and says, oh, I saw the moon, and we know that the moon is below the horizon, or like yesterday, it's an eclipse yesterday, that means it's not New Crescent. We can say, look, we don't accept that. And they will use the data to negate that sighting. But they'll always affirm the new month with the sighting of the moon. I've told you this already. The data they use is quite accurate. They said they've been using the data for so many years, and their practical sighting always matches the data. They even said to me, like, we're happy that you're here, but all of our data comes from Greenwich. So we don't even know why you've really come, because we're taking our knowledge from you. But I've come to learn from them as well. But, so the data we're producing is probably the most accurate predictions of visibility in the world. But this is not new knowledge. You know, ancient Babylonians were able to predict if the moon is visible or not. And the formulas they use are not that different to the formulas that we have. The only thing that makes it difficult to predict is the weather. That's again, this is the head of the committee. These 2 are from the committee. This person very interesting. His job is called Muwakkil, which means timekeeper, and it's a position they had in the Islamic world, where his job, just like you know in the mosque they teach Quran and they teach Hadith, his job is to teach how do you know what time it is to pray. He teaches astronomy. How do you know when the new month starts? And he's full time he works in the mosque. So it's an amazing experience. This is when we sight the moon. This is from the ministry. We pre-submitted the names of the people, and then we declared if we've seen the moon or not. And then he actually took a picture of it and then WhatsApped it. That's how they did it there. For quickness. So that's kind of, I think, a really good model. But that's Morocco. Let's come back to the UK. The UK has no unified Islamic calendar. In Saudi Arabia, they have a unified Islamic calendar. Everybody in Saudi does Eid on the same day. Same as Bangladesh, Pakistan, Morocco, most countries, to be honest. This is where I live. I live very close to this road here in London. It's called Lea Bridge Road in East London. And on Lea Bridge Road, we've got 2 mosques. There's actually a 3rd mosque now, so it's a bit updated. We've got another mosque off it now, so there's 4 mosques just on this little road. But these are the 2 massive mosques. This is called Clapton Masjid. This is called Lea Bridge Road Masjid. And these 2 mosques do not do Eid ever on the same day. Ever. I've never seen them do Eid on the same day. So if we can't do Eid on the same road, how can we do Eid in the whole country on the same day? So this is something we're looking into. In fact, imams from both of these mosques came to the conference alhamdulillah, and I've actually gone on to give presentations at these mosques. And Lee Bridge Road Mosque is actually doing moon sightings every month from their roof now. They've got really good location because it's really clear from their roof. So they've been doing quite well. So why do we have different Eids? The main reason is, don't worry about this picture, I want to explain it, is as follows. Muslims in the UK, the majority of Muslims in the UK are migrants or children of migrants. And you know the countries that they've come from, whether that's Asia, Africa, Middle East, Caribbean, South America, all those countries have got clear skies and they live in moonset no problem. When Muslims first came to the UK, they encountered the very British problem of the weather, which is like the problem we have in Cornwall today, in Truro today. I hope we can overcome it. So they did try and do sightings. I've got reports of them trying to do sightings. And I met some like kind of elder people and they said, we gave up. We thought it's not possible to see the moon in the UK. And so they started saying, we're going to take word from abroad. So in the early days, people phone up Bangladesh or Pakistan or India. I've heard people take moon sighting reports from Egypt, from Zimbabwe, from Malawi, from South Africa, from Morocco, from all over the world. They've taken moon sighting reports. Nowadays, it feels like Turkish mosques will follow Turkey. A large number of mosques in the UK follow Saudi Arabia, and another large group of mosques follow Morocco or South Africa. But just like the sun, you can't see the sun everywhere on Earth at the same time. It's the same with the New Crescent. You can't see the New Crescent on the first day, everyone on Earth at the same time. So if you have one group following Turkey, and Turkey follow a calculation, you have one group following Morocco, and one group following Saudi, they're all different locations, they're all different calculations, and they were doing different methods. And they end up, those respective countries are doing Eid on different dates, so then the mosques that follow them here in the UK, they end up doing Eid on different dates. So we are outsourcing it. And this is just a picture from the data we have in Greenwich. And this is a predicted visibility map. So for every month we produce these. This is for next year, a month for Eid next year. And I just want to show you, this dark green here means you can see it with your eyes. And these lighter green means you could maybe see it with a telescope. Yellow and red you can't see. And here you definitely can't see. But can you see on this day, if you lived in Mexico, you're going to see the moon because it's in the dark green. If you lived in Brazil, if you had a telescope, or Morocco, maybe if you had a telescope. Morocco have actually told me they've never seen it in this shade of green. They've never achieved it. If you're here, you're not going to see the moon. And if you're India, no way. And if you're here, in Australia, New Zealand, it's below the horizon. That's what this red here means. So across the world, on the same day, different countries some will see the moon and some will not see the moon. And here in the UK, if one is taken from here, and one is taken from here, and one is taken from here, that's why we're going to have always this unity in the UK. Now, alhamdulillah, for example, in Cornwall, when we first came here, there was no mosque, no masjid in Cornwall. Now you have a mosque. I hear a little bit halal food is coming, and you have a madrasa. In cities, we never had mosques. Now we've got loads of mosques. Now we've got madrasas, halal food, biryani, everything. So I feel like just the natural progress of Muslims is eventually we will have our Islamic calendar, just like they have in other countries, like they have in South Africa or Pakistan. But we are still growing and developing as a community, and this I feel is kind of one of the next steps in coming together. Just to highlight, I don't want to go into it too much, another reason why we have split Eid dates in the UK is Saudi Arabia have a history of producing sighting reports, which we, from the astronomy community and the observatory, would say is impossible. They could not have seen it. They've seen the moon when it's below the horizon. They claim this happened actually this year. This year they said they saw the moon when the crescent was below the horizon. Now what this means is mosques in the UK, some of them will say, we don't find following Saudi credible, so on this occasion we're not going to follow them. So this causes an additional bit of controversy. I would say, and you will hear what I say, but I think our solution is don't worry about other countries. Saudi Arabia don't ask us to follow them, Morocco don't ask us to follow them. I asked the scholars in Morocco, should we follow you? You've got a really good system. They said no. We don't follow anybody else, nor should you. The Sunnah has always been to cite them in locally, and Sheikh Sulaiman will talk about that maybe in the question and answers. So this is the kind of UK position right now. Some follow Saudi, some follow Morocco. And those following Morocco, they follow Morocco because they say it's the closest country and it's got a very good system. But often those who follow Morocco, they would like to follow the UK. But there's no infrastructure in the UK yet, which is what we've got to look at. So in the conference that we had with a big kind of group of 132 mosques, what we talked about is if we are to come together in the UK, this kind of last part of this presentation, if we are to come together in the UK, we need to find something we come together which is number one, Islamically valid, number two, scientifically valid, three, is acceptable to the Muslim community, four, is practicable. You can't come up with a solution which is impossible for us to implement. And five, we should tend towards local rather than global, because those people who accept local sightings will not accept a global sighting. But those people who say, yeah, we can take it from Pakistan, they'll also accept it from London or from Congo. So it's like the lowest common denominator. So then we kind of work through some of these together. So, okay, what if we all together in the UK said, let's all follow Saudi? Is it Islamically valid to follow Saudi? Well, yes, it's fatwa for it. I can't say it's wrong. I can't say it's haram. Is it scientifically valid? We had some question marks over it. Is it acceptable to the Muslim community? Will Muslims follow Saudi? I can tell you no. Many Muslims, many mosques will not follow Saudi because they say, not just that they're not reliable, they're a distant country. The fatwa from Saudi Arabia is don't follow us. So all those who studied in Medina University, they all tell us as well, this is what they taught us in Saudi. We shouldn't follow Saudi. That's why it's hard to get a consensus around it. Is it practicable to follow Saudi? Very practicable, very easy. Does it tend towards local rather than global? No. So for these reasons, we kind of discussed our long-term solution following Saudi probably will not cause a national sense of unity. Well, what about if we follow the nearest country? What about if we did what the other mosques are doing, which is they attempt to cite in the UK, and if they don't cite it in the UK, they'll take it from Morocco. This literally, it just means following Morocco, because you consider yourself and Morocco as the same region. Is it Islamically valid? Yes. Scientifically valid? Yes. Is this acceptable to the Muslim community? Now, I have talked to so many different mosques, and they say to me, it's a bit, if you like, political. They'll say, well, you're asking me to not follow Saudi, but to follow Morocco. Why? I'm just going to follow Saudi. I had an Algerian mosque say to me, we'll never follow Morocco, ever. Right? So, I don't... So this is what my local mosque does, and I follow this. They follow the nearest country, Morocco. But everybody has said, if we go back to Sunnah sighting, which is sighting in our own locality in the UK, we'll accept it because it's the Sunnah. Nobody has a problem with the Sunnah. Everything else is like a compromise solution that we come up with. And so I would say follow the UK. Is it Islamically valid? Yes. Is Sunnah? Is it scientifically valid? Of course. Is it acceptable? I found it to be acceptable. Is it practicable? I said in time. Because the problem that Muslims have had in the past is that it's just cloudy. And I said, okay, let's try and cite them. Let's see if we can overcome it. And so that was in February. Since February, we've cited them every month. That's 9 months since then, and we saw it every month. Last year, we did the citing, we saw it 10 times out of 12. And the 2 months we didn't see it, there's only like 2 or 3 of us in the country looking. But I think when I look at the weather, Scotland was not cloudy that day, and maybe Cornwall wasn't cloudy that day. So I believe if we were like Morocco and we had the complete coverage, we wouldn't need to follow any other country. So it's going to take a bit of time, but we're getting there. 2 years ago, we had about 3 or 4 sighting locations. Last year for Eid, we had about 55 sighting locations, more than 55 sightings. So alhamdulillah, it's growing. It's growing. What we find though, they're all concentrated. So in London, I've got about 20 sighting locations. But in the whole of London, if I just had 2 or 3 would be enough. But we have a lot of Muslims in London. So the site locations tend to be located around Muslim communities. So we've got sites in Bradford, in Birmingham, and where we don't have coverage really is a place like Cornwall, or all of the southwest, south coast, Wales, and Scotland.
That's right. Did you approach Plymouth and Exeter at all, or Bristol?
Bristol, there's a mosque, and they did the sighting in Eid for us and Ramadan, but they didn't do it afterwards. And Exeter, I have somebody who spoke to it, but I don't have links with Exeter Mosque. And Plymouth, I've seen them online. Piety, yeah, but I haven't made a link with them yet. But I think this is kind of, for this year, our priority
Ongoing, yeah.
to go into other parts of the country, because I've personally, and our team have delivered training all across London, like Essex, Peterborough, Colchester, Norwich, Birmingham, Bedford, Luton, Manchester, York. The north we've done quite a lot of training in, but this area we haven't, so we're trying to come here.
Please also make a note, there's a brother who's a revert in Turkey. Now he is providing mashallah a house of his own, he has donated as a masjid.
Wow.
I don't know his name, but you Google him and you'll find him. And he's also the imam at the masjid, I believe.
Amazing.
I have not read it, so but he will be very useful to your
Incredible.
course, I think,
So that's our proposed solution. There's a bit more to it as well, because I work at the observatory. Like imams I speak to, like very senior imams, they take me very seriously because they don't see me as belonging to one Muslim group or the other. They understand I'm coming from the astronomy community, trying to unite Muslims. That's been really helpful. So ideally what we would need is sighters up and down the country, once a month. I have to say, I found the best sighting locations are, you need 2 or 3 people, 4 people to do it. Some of them, like the one I showed you with a picture of me in it, that's a group of ladies who run that, and they take the children. So they really enjoy doing it because it's very educational for the young children. And I hope this is something we can do here. It's a great sunnah. Once you do it, it's amazing. And if you have a group of you don't even have to do it every month. I mean, I do it every month, but there's another sighting location I know, there's 3 of them. So they only go 4 times a year, they alternate. But it's great fun. You can go have a picnic, go out. So I want to show you how to sight the moon. I want to demonstrate that to you with these 2 videos. I need to connect to the internet though.
İnternet transferi.
It's AB.
Oh,
76 bir sayısı.
76 first.
is this one? Excellent.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it
76.
A, B, 7, 6?
No, first 76 and then AB.
Yeah.
7442.
7, 4, 4, 2. So this is just the last part of the presentation, which is practically how do you sight the moon. I can tell you it's very easy. It's very easy to sight the moon. The only problem is the weather, but you can overcome the weather. So the first video I'm going to show you is this one actually, video 2, how to sight the moon. There we go. So this is how to sight the moon in 1 minute. In 3 steps. Does this sound good?
If the cable is connected and I turn
We
the
sound
turn
it.
thing on.
Okay. Yep. So okay, maybe there. It's muted on my phone, yeah. It's muted on my laptop. Speakers,
Something that is up on the calendar is either 29 or 30. A month that is up the calendar is either 29 or 30 days. If you can see the new crescent on the 29th, it will have 29 days. If you cannot, it will have 30 days. If you want to see the new crescent, this is what to do. Step 1, go to a place with a clear view of the sunset. This is because the new crescent will always appear near the sunset.
And another reason why Cornwall is amazing, because you've got all the western.
Newquay or Land's End would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean a lot of beaches, to be fair.
Step
There's always
2,
nice.
locate and mark exactly where the sun is setting. Step 3, wait for it to darken, perhaps around half an hour, and keep looking for the new crescent. If the moon is visible, it will appear usually no more than around 25 degrees to the left of the sunset. That's around 1 handspan, or you can measure that using a compass.
Okay, when I made this video, I put in this technical information. As I've trained more people, I make it more simple. Okay, all you need to do is mark where the sun sets, so the sunset there, so in my head it's behind the building, and it's going to appear to the left of the sunset. How far to the left, if you want, you can do it just like that. So imagine there's a big building behind me, it will not appear more than, this is in the UK by the way. In the southern hemisphere, the moon might appear just above the sunset or to the right. So, but wherever you are in the world, it's going to be right close to the sunset. Okay? And the reason for that is, imagine, I'm going to use my phone. Imagine my hand is the sun and this phone is the moon. Okay, the phone's black. The sun rises and sets every day, yes? You agree with that? So it rises like this and sets like this. On the day of the new moon, which is when it's invisible, the sun and the moon rise together. So it's too bright and this big light makes the moon invisible and just rise together and they set together. You don't see it. That happened yesterday. Happens every month. The new crescent, the orbit moves a bit and now there's a gap. So the sun rises, then the new crescent, then the moon rises. But you can't see it. It's in the sky all day, but you can't see the moon in the daytime when it's so thin. Then the sun sets and it gets dark and now you're just going to catch the moon setting, and that's that moon, and that's why it's going down like this. Oops, sorry.
Alhamdulillah, recite the moon, and now you can recite the dua. For more information and to keep up.
So that's all there is to it. 3 steps. 1, find a nice location. 2, watch and mark the sunset. And 3, look a bit to the left. Okay? You have to wait till it gets dark. It might take half an hour, 40 minutes. Remember, the moon is going to set. It will go below the horizon, so you can't stand there for 3 hours, the moon's gone. You normally have 60 minutes. Today you have 70 minutes. Some days you have a bit less. All that data is available online. Daddy! Now, I know the data so well. Now, not because I know the data, I realize you don't even need the data. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ, his Sahaba were Bedouins, they were doing it. You don't need any data. You just need to look at the sunset. That's it. Very simple. Okay, the second one I'm going to show you is, this is a video I made for this Eid, but I think it's a good video to help you think about locations because you don't have to sight it from a beach. Okay? So this will give you some ideas. But beach will be very nice.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm here at the top of the hill in Greenwich. I've got a brilliant clear view of the western horizon. And this is where I'm going to be doing the moon sighting for Eid on Tuesday the 4th of June after Maghrib with the help of the Royal Observatory. But you don't have to be in Greenwich to sight the moon. In fact, this part is going to be closed. You can sight the moon on the top of any hill as long as you've got a clear view of the western horizon. Or you can sight it from the top of a mosque roof or up the minaret at a mosque next to you. Or you can sight it from the top of a tower block. I'm here at the top of the tower block. And as long as you can see the sunset clearly, it's a great place to sight the new crescent. Or you can even sight it from your own home if you've got a balcony or a window that overlooks the western horizon. But my favourite type of place to do it is a park. That's because you can bring a good group of people together. It doesn't have to be a high location. As long as you can see the western horizon and the sunset, it's a totally fine location. All of these locations are absolutely brilliant places to sight the moon. As long as you can see the western horizon and you can see the sunset, you'll be in a good position. That's because the new crescent emerges near the sunset. The Prophet Muhammad said, begin fasting when you sight the new crescent and complete your fast when you sight the new crescent. And we have an opportunity this year to go out and sight the new crescent for Eid on Tuesday the 4th of June. And when you do see the crescent, it's such a wonderful, joyous, happy experience. So go out and look for the crescent. Take your friends and family. You'll have a wonderful time. And sighting the moon is really easy. All you have to do is locate where the sun sets, and then wait for around half an hour to an hour, and the new crescent will emerge just around where the sun sets, a bit to the left of the sunset. Now, wherever you're sighting the moon, we want you to tell us.
Alright, and then the rest of it is how you report, which you don't need to look at now. So, I have people who, they like take pictures of the new crescent from their bathroom window because it's got a good view, and that's fine. The beach will be very good though, like where you have an unobscured view, so you don't have trees or buildings in the way. But for example, speaking to Dr. Bari earlier on today, you were saying you could see the sunset from your house. So, like this is that tower block. Oh, it's going to come in a minute. That tower block, they saw this moon here for Eid, and again in the middle of the city. Once you see the moon, amazing there is a dua associated with it. The Prophet taught his companions to do this dua, which is Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil amni wal iman wa salamati wal islam wa tawfiq lima tuhibbu wa tarda wa Allah. The translation is there, but what's amazing about the dua I find is the end of the dua, where the Prophet is teaching us to look at the moon and say, Rabbi wa Rabbuka Allah. My Rabb, my Lord, and your Lord is Allah. As you say, the thing that is looking after me, and the thing that is looking after you and making you go big and small is one Allah. And you know, sometimes, I don't know, like me, I felt sad in my life. And I thought, oh, the moon disappears, but it'll come back again. It's reminding us that Allah is taking care of everything. So I really like that. Once you've seen the moon, currently I think the best place to put it is moonsighting.org.uk. So I recommend if you just nominate one person or whoever. Another thing you can do is, I would like whoever's doing moon sighting here, just take your phone number and you can just WhatsApp it to me. Eventually, I've been speaking to the observatory. We want to set up a better national reporting system, maybe like an app or a website, which is maintained by the observatory. What we found is there are many organizations, but they're always associated with a type of Muslim group. So Regent's Park Mosque or London Central Mosque, it's heavily associated with Saudi Arabia. The embassy control the senior positions. The embassy appoint the senior positions of the mosque. And then there's other mosques which are associated with Turkish government. And then some mosques associated with Salafi group, some mosques associated with Sufi group, some mosques this, Bengali, Pakistani. And so I feel like if we can have the observatory help us work with lots of Muslims, we can have a very prestigious national organization supporting us in the reporting of it as well. Just a quick thing. I didn't teach you this, but I'm just going to tell you. The moon in the UK, New Crescent, is always like this. Okay, this direction. It's always going to be like this. Because we're in the northern hemisphere, it looks like this. When the moon goes big and then disappears, the moon will actually appear like that. That's the waning moon, the disappearing moon. This is the waxing moon. This is the one we're looking for today. However, in other parts of the world, this is on the equator, it looks like a boat. This is actually from South Africa. So the moon looks different depending on where you are in the world. Sometimes people send me fake pictures of the moon, right? And they send me a picture like this, and they say, yeah, I saw the moon in like Birmingham. I say, you didn't, because it looks like this. Okay, it happens. So I think those were all the things I wanted to talk about, but just this is kind of beyond the presentation. I'm not an Islamic scholar. I come from the observatory, so I shy away from like trying to interpret Quran or Hadith. But this is a Hadith which has touched me a lot, and I just want to share with you, and how this Hadith helps me think about this project. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he was actually asked in his lifetime, can we use data to just calculate them? The Jewish people who lived amongst the Prophet ﷺ, they had a Jewish Hebrew calendar. It's already calculated, pre-calculated calendar. And they were asking, can we use a calendar like them? So we don't have to go out and select them. We can just print it. I mean, they won't print it, but they had it in advance. Okay, this Jewish calendar was sorted out 200 years before the Prophet was even born. They had already written, okay? And he said no. And this is, he responded, he said, Inna ummatun ummiyun la naktub wa la nahsub ash-shahr hakadha wa hakadha. He said, we are an ummi nation. And he used this word ummi. We don't write or calculate. And he said, the month is just like this. And he did it with his fingers. 29, hakadha, and 30. Hakadha, 29 and 30. Now, sometimes when we in the astronomy community say, this sighting is, for example, in Saudi Arabia, last year, a country, Mali, said they saw the moon before it had even completed the orbit of the last one. So, like, they did it 2 or 3 days early. So when we from the observatory or astronomy community say, you know, this is, you've seen it incorrectly. Some people, they bring out this hadith and they say, we don't write or calculate means using data is wrong. And they say because we are ummi nation. Ummi often means you can't read or write, illiterate. So they say this hadith means we're all illiterate, that's why we're not allowed to use data. I don't personally, lots of other scholars, but I don't personally find that convincing. Because if I ask you who here cannot read or write, you can all read or write, you can all read this. And if calculation wasn't acceptable, we wouldn't be able to just use that app to work out with the prayer time. So it must mean something else, according to me. So ummi, I looked into the word. Ummi, the way the word ummi is used in the Quran. So let's just start in the Quran. Ummi, in the Quran, it means non-Jewish. Nabiul Ummi, he's not the Jewish prophet. And we have said amongst the Ummiyin, we've said amongst the non-Jews. And the reason they were known as Ummi is because they didn't have a scripture. Jewish people, up until then, were scriptured people, they had Torah. And the Jews used to say, you are Ummi. So when they're asking the Prophet, can we use your Ummi calendar, can we use your Jewish calendar? He said, no, we're not Jewish. We are Ummi. We are non-Jewish, we have a different calendar. That's kind of one interpretation. But also, I spoke to some scholars, and a professor of Arabic came to one of my courses. He said, this word Ummi comes from the word mother as well. As if like when you're born, you're on the fitrah. And he said, you know, it's to do with, we are a nation that's connected to nature, our fitrah. Prophet ﷺ is teaching us connect. For us, we're in the city, we don't even look at trees. But here in Cornwall, it's amazing. There's some beach, and so maybe it's a different context for you. And like one of my friends, I'll just finish with this, is an Arabic professor. He said he went to Jordan and he got lost in the desert. And as he was getting lost, he found a Bedouin boy, and he asked this Bedouin child, do you know the way back to the camp? The Bedouin boy said, yes, you see that star over there, follow that star, and you'll find your way back to the tent. And this professor of Arabic, who's also my friend, says, I felt like that's the first time I understood this hadith, we are Ummi nation. Our nature is we should understand the sun, and the moon, and the stars, because it's related to our ritual practice of prayer. So, for that reason, like these are some of the morals I take from it. So we are a nation, ummah. So I always think this is a community calendar. It's something we do together. We go outside the moon together. It's not just for the elites. It should connect us to nature. It should be distinctly Muslim, meaning based on hilal visibility, not new moon. The Jewish calendar is related to the new moon, not the hilal. And I think it should be easy for everyone to access. I think this is what this hadith is telling us. You shouldn't need to know data or read or write. It should be accessible to everyone. Allah is for everybody, and I think that's the metaphor. The moon is for everybody. Anyone can look and enjoy the moon. So that's just kind of my own personal thing. Now, what we're doing now is phase 1 education. I've been doing that at the observatory for Sheikh Suleiman last couple of years. We've phase 2 engaging with imams. We've been doing that, and this is what we're doing today. Is phase 3, trying to train people who are interested, get people involved, and set up sighting locations. Eventually, when we have sighting locations and a reporting mechanism, I believe our next natural state will be for example, if you are the sighters here, you have a representative from your sighters, and then we have representatives from all the sighters from around the country, and then make a national board of sighters. And that board should be of the sighters because they are the people doing the work, and then we can slowly decide the marks to need. So that's the kind of end of this presentation. It's 2:54. I feel like, yeah, should we do Asr and then we can eat, and any questions?